I'd stayed for 20 hours, exactly 20 hours, and I knew I need to come back here. I need to somehow live here. This is the coolest place I've ever seen.
And when Axel says coolest, he means that literally. We're talking about the furthest north down on the planet. Yes, that far north. Edge of the map, polar bear territory kind of north. But why on earth would someone choose to live way up here, where it's freezing cold, dark for months on end, and feels like the middle of nowhere? So what's life actually like here? Well, we wanted to find out, so in mid-April we hopped on a plane and flew all the way to the Arctic Circle to meet Axel and see for ourselves.
My name is Axel. I happen to be living in Svalbard, and this is the best place I know. We are in Longyearbyen, the most northern proper settlement in the world.
Last year, Axel moved away from his home country of Sweden to live in Svalbard, the last stop before the North Pole. Svalbard is part of Norway, but it's pretty far from where most Norwegians live. It's an archipelago 2,000 kilometers from Oslo. Most people come here for a once-in-a-lifetime trip. Axel visited for 4 days in 2023. 20 hours in, he was already planning his permanent move.
So I was sitting in my hotel room, just going to the laptop, how to move to Svalbard. And all of the answer was just, no, you can't. It is super difficult to move to Svalbard.
But Axel did it, and he's showing us around town at night, and it's minus 12 degrees Celsius. And yes, this is nighttime.
It's about 10:30, 10:35-ish, and it's still bright outside. So in late spring, it just becomes bright because the sun will be up all day, and it will just be bright all day, all night, 24/7. And the sun will not set until mid-August.
How do you manage to sleep?
Very good blinds on your windows. Otherwise, you're not sleeping, and the entire day-night cycle just gets completely thrown off.
Longyearbyen is home to just over 2,400 people from more than 50 countries. A tiny but functional settlement. In winter, temperatures can drop below minus 20 degrees. So why did Axel choose to live exactly here?
It was the nature, the environment. I realized that I need to move here. There's a lot of wildlife, although not very many different kinds. So you have walruses, it's also Arctic foxes, and of course polar bears, what Svalbard is the most known for.
Svalbard is home to around 300 polar bears. They usually stay along the coast and rarely go in the settlements. But for Axel, really exploring nature means going beyond the limits of Longyearbyen, sometimes for just a short walk, other times for a multi-day expedition into the Arctic wilderness.
I'd like to go on a hike at least once a week, preferably 2 or sometimes 3.
Today, he's taking us along on one of his hikes, along with his friend Isak. And to go out of town, you've got to be prepared.
I'm gonna check what wind direction we have. This wind direction is actually very important here.
First on the list is food, but don't imagine anything too fancy. Axel's go-to menu for longer expeditions is freeze-dried.
At least our lunches will be this, and then we will cook proper dinners after we've set up camp. But we end up eating quite a lot of this stuff while out on long trips.
And off we go.
So this is the polar bear sign. This is a sign that says if you pass this point, you can expect to get into polar bear territory.
Why are you carrying a gun?
So in the rare event that we were to meet a polar bear, then we do need some way of defending ourselves.
And have you seen a polar bear?
I've seen 4 polar bears. At quite some distance, not close enough to need to worry about anything, but so they are definitely around. So once was actually from the school window when the bear was walking on the other side of the fjord. The day after, when we kept going, we basically followed polar bear tracks the entire day because the polar bear had been walking the exact same route that we were going. So we were walking on skis, basically following these polar bear tracks, and they're big.
As we stop for a short lunch break, the weather doesn't seem to be on our side. It gets worse and worse. Lots of snow, little visibility. It's getting harder to walk with all of our camera gear. The wind and cold starts messing with our equipment and we need to turn back. For non-experienced tourists, these sudden shifts in the weather can be dangerous and there is no room for hesitation.
If something happens in your group, then you're the ones first on scene. Any emergency responders can be more than 40 minutes away.
We have to go through some practical tasks outside, like digging and helping people that are like in danger.
Axel and Isak both study in the same folk school in Svalbard. They don't have exams or tests. Instead, they learn survival skills, shooting, and even Arctic photography. And even more importantly, how to read the unpredictable Arctic weather.
More of a thing is wind in the valleys, because you can have not very much wind, but the valleys are quite deep and there are no trees or any other vegetation to stop the wind. So you can have almost no wind at all in one valley, but the next valley over is basically a storm.
Today, Svalbard attracts researchers and thrill seekers from all over the world, but it wasn't always like this. In the 19th and 20th centuries, it was actually a hub for coal mining. Settlements were built for the miners, like Barentsburg, Pyramiden, and the largest one, which we're also visiting now, Longyearbyen. By the 90s, many mines had closed. People from all over the world came to Svalbard for Arctic research and tourism. Today, Svalbard is on the front lines of climate change. In fact, it's heating around 6 times faster than the global average.
So just a half a degree difference in the global temperature will have multiple degrees difference in Svalbard. It's very visible with how much the glaciers are pulling back and how much the glaciers are melting.
To Axel, Longyearbyen seems like a dream adventure, but let's be honest. It's ice cold most of the year, pitch dark for months on end during winter, and there are no friends or family around. Does it ever get lonely?
So it starts getting darker in August and September, and in November, I think it's about mid-November, then it's just completely pitch black until March, February, March, and it's just eternal night. The sun never crosses the horizon. I think that the person who would be lonely here probably would also be lonely on the mainland. It's an extremely social space in the school, and the town is surprisingly social as well, because it's a small town and you don't really have the option of going into a big city, because the big city is on the mainland. There is nothing else here. It feels like this Antarctic research station, but it's a village. It's the same people here all the time. So if you happen to not be vibing with the people that are here, then you can't really go looking for others, because there are no others.
Some people might struggle with the darkness or making friends, but for Axel, these aren't such a big deal. But he's still glad when family comes to visit, like his mum, who is here for the first time since he moved out here. His parents weren't exactly shocked when he said he was moving.
Actually, not so surprised, because it's within him, but I know he likes these kind of areas and the outdoors activities.
And wintry activities,
Yes.
Adventures, I would say.
Do you miss him when he's so far away?
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Of course. And we thought he was coming home now in May.
Axel's just about to wrap up a pretty epic year of expeditions. There's only about a month left before the school year ends. So how does it feel?
Yeah, it's a bit mixed. I've been loving my year here. I've been loving my time in Longyearbyen and Svalbard. So hopefully I manage to get a job doing tour guiding. That'd be super rad.
Svalbard may be cold, and the weather is definitely unpredictable. And maybe it takes a bit of getting used to. But one thing is for sure. Axel is not quite ready to leave.
I would love to find a way to be able to stay here in Longyearbyen and just continue exploring Svalbard like I have been.